Hello everyone. So welcome to the next session in our Indian modern history class. So today we'll talk about the next session in our theme 5, that is Ghadarites, Ghadar movement. Ghadar movement is basically we'll summarize few things first and then talk about the Ghadar movement in detail. Before that, let's solve few questions. पहले कुछ questions solve करते हैं. Right. So way back, in fact, our first lecture, that is something with respect to the Portuguese. So Portuguese were first to arrive. कुछ revision भी कर लेंगे. There will be some revision as well. Right. So Portuguese were the first to arrive in India and had established the monopoly of the eastern trade for nearly a century. Yet they were unable to maintain dominions in India because their merchants enjoyed less power than their landed aristocrats. As compared to other European powers, they lagged in the development of the shipping. They followed a policy of religious intolerance. So, what were the reasons that they were unable to maintain their dominions in India? So, we have studied about the decline of the Portuguese, right? Some additional points are there in these questions. So, before we discuss the solution, with respect to main exam as well. For example, we have discussed in detail why French were not able to grow as compared to the Britishers, right? So similarly, on those lines, the question can be asked on the Portuguese per se directly. That is their contribution and why they were not able to maintain their dominions in India. So this question you can expect. Chalo. So what is the answer? Please pause and try to answer the question. So Portuguese have the monopoly. We have discussed lost a lot of questions that these Western areas, they have the monopoly for nearly a century in such areas, right? And that's why they have their establishment at Cochin, Goa, Div, Daman, right? And they combine the force with the trade because earlier they had the monopoly on the knowledge of the shipping and all these things. But by 18th century, they lost their commercial influence. And what are the factors? The first factor is, just like in the French, the landed aristocrats have the more power as compared to the merchants, like we have seen in the Britishers, like we have seen in the French. So in the French also we have seen how much state tends to interfere into the commercial activity. Similarly, that was the case. Achha, before that there was also a case, because earlier when the Portuguese have come, there was a lot of anarchy in such areas and here in the world. They were able to come and they were able to trade and establish their dominance. But later on, some powerful dynasties have emerged in Egypt, Persia, North India, rise of turbulent Marathas as their immediate neighborhood. So they have captured this Seleucid and Basine in 1739. We've discussed that. This is one of the first reasons. Second is the merchant enjoy less power. Third, we have seen their religious policy, especially the Mughals did not like it. We have discussed the case of the Shah Jahan, where that did not seemed well, and they were ousted from the Bengal thereupon. So the religious policy of the Portuguese, such as activity of the Jutes, gave the rise to the political fear, right? So their conversion to the Muslim made the Hindu very resentful. This was also the important reason. Their dishonest trade practices also evoked a strong reaction. They earned notoriety as the sea pirates. So sea pirates. So they also did not have a very poor. Had a very poor image. Arrogance and violence brought them under animosity of the ruler of the small states and imperial Mughals. The earlier monopoly of the knowledge of the sea trade and how to do this warfare was not confined to Portuguese now, because now these Dutch and the French, the English, now they are also learning this art which the earlier Portuguese know, and they have outshined the Portuguese. One more important thing was that the push factor, as this explains that the Dutch and the English has greater resource and more compulsions to expand overseas, right? As compared to the Portuguese, they overcame the Portuguese resistance one by one. Portuguese possession fell to its opponents. Okay? So these are the reasons through which the Portuguese influence fell. So your question can be asked in the 10 marker as well. You can expect one question on these lines. ठीक? चलो. So the answer will be their merchants enjoyed less power as compared to landed aristocrats. Yes, and landed aristocrats are basically are more status quoist. Not risk taking is less, right? And they also, if the power is more with the landed aristocrats, they will be always resentful or fearful of these merchants. Because the merchants on the other hands are, or the seafarer merchants are very very enterprising, है ना? So these landed aristocrats are always world history mein, if you have history optional, you must be knowing that they are very much fearful of this young, or fearful of this enterprising merchants. Then, as compared to the Europeans, they lagged in the development of the shipping later on. Yes. Then third, they followed the policy of religious intolerance. All the statements are right. Let's go to the next question. It's an easy question. Consider the following statement with reference to changes in the army after the 1858. So we have discussed that how 1857 revolt has been a watershed movement, right? So the proportion of the Europeans to Indians in the army was introduced. The Europeans troops were kept in the key geographical and the military position. Which of the following statements given are the correct? 1, 2, 1 and 2, neither 1 or 2. So pause the video and try to answer the question. So we have seen the first statement, that is the proportion of the Europeans in the India army was reduced. No. In fact, proportion of the Europeans to Indians in the army has been increased. Secondly, European troops were kept in the key geographical and military position. Answer is yes. So two answer is correct. Tick. Two only. Next question, which of the following organizations were or was, that is, reformist in nature? If you're not able to see the question because of the video, so question is which of the following organizations was or were reformist in nature? That's the question. Reformist in the nature. First is Tattva Bodhani Sabha, Ramunai Mazdayan Sabha, Devband movement. So these are the three movements, three things, three institutions that we have read. Now pause the video and try to remember that by who is the leader associated with them, and was it a reformist or a revivalist? Now, some of the things that we have seen, for example, Tattva Bodhani Sabha, it was is associated with the Debendranath Tagore, right? The father of the Rabindranath Tagore. We have discussed it in the Tagore family chart, if you remember, right? So Debendranath Tagore, the associated with the Tattva Bodhani Sabha, later on he dissolved Tattva Bodhani Sabha and merged it into the Brahmo Samaj. And obviously the idea was based upon the rational ideas, is basically old rationalizing, or based upon rationalism and good things. So it was a more of a reformist movement. So promote a more rational and humanist form of the Hinduism based upon Vedanta, the Upanishad that form the last part of the Veda. Tattvabodhini Sabha aimed at shielding themselves and their reformed faith from criticism by distancing themselves from the outdated version. So that is Tattvabodhini Sabha. So Tattvabodhini Sabha was a reformist institution. Similarly, Ramunai Mazdayan Sabha, Dadabhai Naroji, major leader who was associated with it, it was associated with the reforms in the Parsi society, initiate modernization of the Parsi social custom regarding the education of the women, marriage, social position of women in general. So that is Ramunai Mazdayan Sabha. Third is the Devband movement. Devband movement, that is, it is a revivalist movement in the form of the Devband, right? We have seen that Devband movement was opposed to the Aligarh movement by the Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, and that is why they were in the favor of the Indian National Congress. Okay? So that is Devband. So Devband movement was a revivalist movement. It was a revivalist movement. Tattvabodhini Sabha was a reformist movement, and Ramunai Mazdayan Sabha was also a reformist movement. ठीक है चलो. With reference to Vernacular Press Act, 1878. Which of the following statement is or are correct? The act aimed to restrict the freedom of both Indian language and Indian newspapers in India. English newspaper in India. Aimed to restrict the freedom of both Indian language, sorry, and English newspaper in India. Under the act, the DM, district magistrate, was all empowered to take punitive actions which cannot be appealed in the court of the law. The act was repealed by Lytton in 1882. So, what is the correct answer? It's a very important act. We have discussed it in detail in the modern nationalism press chapter. So the first statement, the name itself, that is it was a vernacular press act, right? So it was not aimed at the English newspaper, and that is why that is uh, one of the newspaper converted into English overnight, right? Amrit Bazar Patrika. ठीक? So first statement is wrong. Obviously, under the DM is empowered, yes, and third statement is also wrong because it was the Lytton who imposed it. It was the Lytton who imposed it, and it was the Ripon who repealed it later on. ठीक है? चलो. So Vernacular Press Act was designed for better control the vernacular press and effectively punish and repress with seditious writing. The DM was empowered to call upon the printer and the publisher of any vernacular newspaper, and they will get a bond कि भाई you will not do anything, right, to cause disaffection among the government and antipathy among the person of the different group. You will not do it. And the papers were already not happy because in the time of the Lytton, a lot of reactionary policies was there. A famine was there, yet they have organized this darbar, lavish darbar. So vernacular press was critical of the government. The printer publisher could also be required to deposit the security that could be forfeited if the regulations were contravened. The magistrate's action was final and no appeal could be made in the court of law. Proceedings were instituted against the Som Prakash under the Vernacular Press Act, but Amrit Bazar Patrika turned overnight into a English newspaper to escape the act. It was a strong opposition to act. Finally, Ripon repealed it in 1882. रिपन ने फाइनली इसको रिपील कर दिया. चलो. So the first statement we have discussed, first and third is wrong, second is right, second option is right. Now let's come back to the session. 12 minute we have passed 12 minutes. Now let's come back to session. So now till now we have studied the Surat split, है ना? Surat split पढ़ा. Then we talked about the revolutionaries, and you can see from the period of Surat split to the World War I, it was relatively a period of ease or a period of relatively peace. There was a or political inactivity. Who was active in this time? We have seen the revolutionaries were active at this time. In fact, it was only the revolutionary who carried on to the flag of this all these things which were happening, murders and all these things, some political activity. Extremists were in jail or repressed. Moderates were placated by the Morley Minto reform. We have discussed the Morley Minto reforms as well. भाई तो फिर in this period nothing happened, nothing significant happened, right? Now comes the World War I, a big event that will evoke the reaction from all sections of the nationalist. So mid 1914 World War I has been broke out between the Great Britain, France, Italy, Japan and other things. The British government during the wartime appealed to Indian leaders to join hands with them, although the leaders agreed, but they forwarded their own terms and conditions. Now obviously think, the British wanted the cooperation of the Indians. Why they wanted the cooperation of the Indians? For example, when you are busy at some other place, obviously you want this place to be quieter. Then don't cause any Swadeshi movement or something like that. So that we have to divert our energy from there to here. First thing. Secondly, the resources which they wanted for the war efforts, whether it was the human people, the army, whether it was the money, whether it was the food, all this will be used from the India to the other countries. India to the Britain, है ना? यहाँ से resource लेके they'll put it there. And that is why, for example, whether it is World War I or whether it is World War II, whenever the war will break out, they will seek the assistance of the Indians. They will appeal on the moral high ground. For example, here they will appeal ki bhai, we are facing a war, you need to support us, we have given you moral minto reform and all these things. Similarly, when the World War II happened, they will say, "Arey, the देखो Hitler is threatening the whole world, this is not right, and all these things they will do. So point ye hai, the point is that, and now the nationalists or the Indians have to take the decision. They have to make the decision whether to go ahead and support them or not. That's the idea. So during the World War One, and also during the World Wars, what will happen? The condition of the country will become very poor, right? Soaring inflation combined with heavy taxation, high casualty rates, disease, disruption of trade, increase the distress among the masses. So the masses will not be happy. So some of the things that you need to remember, that defense expenditure increased, right? Heavy war loans and rising taxes and land revenue has been settled, could not be immediately enhanced. There was more indirect taxation on trade and industry. Already the trade and industry, which is already in shambles. Then also it was combined with underproduction of the food crops. You know, crop failures happened in 1818 and 2021. So a lot of distress and displeasure was there in India. With the prices of the industrial and imported goods and food crops were rising, affecting the poor peasantry, that of the imported agricultural raw material did not increase at the same pace. Okay? So peasantries were not getting the good price for their product as well. So this was the situation in the World War One and India. Now, obviously, if we talk about the response of the Indians, now Indians are not a first of all homogeneous entities, right? We have ourselves seen that it comprises of the moderates at this time. There are some moderates, there is a group extremist, and then there are revolutionaries, and everyone will have their different outlook to the war, and they will have their different reactions to the appeal by the Britishers. Now British are appealing कि भाई support us in the war effort, that support us in the war effort, but nobody will listen. Or there will be, for example, the moderates who still believe in the loyalty, who still believe in the constitutional method, they will say that we need to support the empire because it is our matter of duty. हमें इनको support करना ही करना है because that is a matter of the duty, the moderates will say. The extremist will say, that is moderates, the extremist will say that Tilak was also released in June 1914. So this date you need to remember, huh? June 1914, Tilak was released. When the Tilak was released, Tilak also adopted a bit moderate tone. He was not extremist before he went to the jail. So he supported the war effort. He said, "ठीक है भाई, we will support you in the war." But, and why he supported? The reasons were different. Moderate supported because they believe that it is a matter of duty, while Tilak believed that if we support them, then they will repay us with our loyalty, the loyalty which we have shown in this time, and they will give some sort of self-government or some sort of Swaraj to the India. That Indians have helped the Britishers, and the Indians should be given some sort of a, okay, bhai, we have supported you, give us something. So that kind of thing. So extremists believe that they have mistaken belief, obviously, that the British will repay our loyalty. Now the revolutionaries will be very, very angry. The revolutionaries will say that use this opportunity. At this time, strike the iron when it is hot. At this time, the British are very weak. When the British are weak, what we need to do, when the British are weak, we only need to strike the British at this time, because British are currently very, very weak. When they are weak, then we can overthrow them. So this is one of the reactions of the revolutionaries. And one of the reactions we will see, that is the Ghadar movement, that is the reaction of the revolutionaries. Ghadar movement was not only the one reaction, along with that a few mutinies has also happened, trying to overthrow the Indian state, British Indian state. For example, there was a revolutionary activity outside India. So you can see in Singapore, very famous, a lot of scattered mutinies have happened. One of the most notable was in Singapore by Punjabi Muslim 5th Light Infantry. It was crushed after the fierce battle in which many were killed. So one mutiny happened in Singapore as well. Not very important for prelims, but yes, one mutiny did happen. The major thing that we have to study, that is the Ghadar movement. So before we discuss completely, let's summarize basically पढ़ना क्या है. Now lot of Indians went to USA, North America, US, Canada, and especially from the Punjabi community. Basically, they went as laborers or other things, and they have settled in the, this is your North America, and they have settled on the western coast. But these Indians were facing a lot of discrimination there. Imagine that time when the blacks were not blacks, who were in fact those who were born there, they were facing so much discrimination. Imagine the discrimination these people were facing. So these people were facing a lot of discrimination and all these things, and they believe that one of the belief was that we are facing this discrimination because our India, from where we belong, India is enslaved by the British. So we belong to a country that is being already under, that does not have independence, and that is being enslaved by the Britisher, and that is why we are feeling discriminated. ठीक? So they have decided कि भाई the solution will be, so they started doing some political activity. They came together, some political activity first, obviously for redress of their local grievances will be there, and then overarching agenda कि भाई we need to get India independent. Overarching agenda कि भाई ultimately if you have to cut down to the root cause, what is the root cause? That India is enslaved. So we need to cut down to the root cause, उस पे break करना है, right? This is how the Ghadars will think, Ghadarites. So ठीक है, ये चल रहा है revolutionary activities. Now two events will happen that will prompt them. First will be the World War One. When they'll see World War One, उनको क्या लगेगा? What they will believe? They will believe that now comes an opportunity where we can do this thing. We can overthrow the British India. And second thing, that is the Komata Komagata Meru incident. We will see this incident. This incident will accelerate the process, of doing this. The objective condition that we have discussed. So subjective condition plus the objective condition. ठीक, तो ये बात हो गई. Now they will decide one date कि भाई this is the one day. What they will believe? Ghadarites believe, that is their mistaken belief again, कि भाई in India everyone, now they are sitting in USA, ठीक, they are thinking that everyone in India wants to throw out British. They believe that everyone in India wants to throw out British. What they require is leadership, what they require is arms, and what they require is a movement. That's all they require. So they believe that everyone in India is waiting to overthrow the Britishers. Everyone in India is waiting to overthrow the Britishers. So they have decided one date कि भाई इस दिन को, this day we will do an insurrection. The army will favor us. The people will come out and favor the Ghadar leaders. So they will send some Ghadar leaders from here. They will set up something. They will decide a date, and on this day the revolt will be taken up. And on that day India will be free from the British. That is the core idea. But before they were able to do that, first we have seen the mistaken belief. Because Indians are not actually politically aroused by now. They don't in fact get the idea of the independence, because no major political party or no major leader is talking about the independence as of yet. We have seen the moderates, we have seen the extremists. Nobody is talking about the independence. First thing. Second thing, that the British get to know about this. When the British get to know about this plan, they will cut them in between, and they will put this defense of India rule. Obviously, in that time, the World War One is going on. They will suppress it. They will jail these people, and the movement will come to an end. So this is the whole Ghadar movement in summary. Summarize, if you want to summarize, this is overall the idea of the Ghadar movement. Now we have to read event by event. Chalo. So let's very quickly understand it. Dekho, what we get. For example, today you have watching this lecture, let's say. Now, after let's say 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, what you will be able to recall, basically this story you are able to recall. The way I have told it, some of the stories which you have already read or you will read in your NCRTs, or whatever I am teaching now, or the stories which I am discussing here, these facts will come and go. This is what you have to revise again and again. But these are the stories which are embedded into us. So this is where it is important. Now, Ghadar, the beginning. The Ghadar party was a revolutionary group organized around a weekly newspaper that is known as the Ghadar. Its headquarters was in San Francisco in USA. These revolutionaries include mainly the ex-soldiers and the peasants who has migrated from Punjab to USA and Canada in the search of the better employment opportunities. They were based in US and Canadian city along the western Pacific coast that we have discussed. This is Alaska, this is Canada, this is USA, this is California and USA, and this is Mexico. Not accepted by the local people, and law passed for not allowing migrants to own property. And they get together and they start some political activity. They start some political activity. Then Anusilan Samiti, the leaders were watching from India. Anusilan Samiti, that is a revolutionary party, is being created in India. Now this revolutionary party is watching from India and they are saying ki bhai, they have sent the leaders, that is Tarak Nath Das, who started this Free Hindustan, GD Kumar, Swadesh Sevak Home to North America. Later on, these people, such as this Tarak Nath Das, will start this newspaper, the Free Hindustan, and all this. So these will be sent up first from India to USA to help these people. Then within the Canada, the Vancouver authorities pressured these people, and then they have to shift to Seattle. Seattle, that is in the Washington state in the USA, not in Washington DC, but Washington state, and they will set up this United India House. Now, Bhagwan Singh preached violent overthrow of the British, and finally, one of the leaders which will come up, that is Lala Hardayal. And Lala Hardayal will do what? He will start this Ghadar movement. So this is the background of this Ghadar movement. ये क्या है? Background है Ghadar movement का. What is the background? Very quickly, these are the people who are living in the West Pacific, on Western Pacific coast. Secondly, these are the ex-soldiers who have been discriminated. Ex-soldier peasants went there for better employment opportunity, are being discriminated. Third, started their political activity. Next, some revolutionaries from India have been sent from here to there. And then some Lala Hardayar will come, one of the major leaders, and he will start this Ghadar movement, or the Ghadar the Ghadar, first the magazine, then Ghadar movement. This is Seattle, which is in the USA, and this is Vancouver, which is in Canada. So pre-Ghadar revolutionaries activity have been carried on by Ramdas Puri, GD Kumar, Tarak Nath Das, Sohan Lal Bakhana, Lala Hardayal, who reached there in 1911. To carry out revolutionary activities, they have set up the Swadesh Sevak Home and Vancouver and United India House in the Seattle. So ये नाम याद रखने, you have to remember these two names. Finally, in 1913, Ghadar was established. The Ghadar program was to organize the assassination of the official, publish revolutionary anti-imperialist literature, work among the Indian troops stationed abroad, procure arms, and bring about a simultaneous revolt in all British colonies. So, this paragraph is important. What was basically the program of the Ghadarites? First, to organize assassination of the official because they were revolutionaries, anti-imperialist literature, work among the Indian troops so that you can incite them against doing the rebellion or mutiny against the British. So British troop, which Indian British troop, which is working for the Britain, and bring about a simultaneous revolt in all British colonies. Something about Lala Hardayal. So Lala Hardayal was founded the Ghadar party in America, gave up the 2 Oxford scholarship and turned down a career in the Indian civil services to join the nationalist movement. Moved Paris in 1909 to be the editor of the Bande Mataram. Right? He died in 1939. So he is associated with the Ghadar party, Lala Hardayal. Now, if we talk about the Ghadar leadership, some other leaders, as you discussed, Bakartullah, Bhagwan Singh, Lala Hardayal, Sohan Singh Barkhana, Kartar Singh Sabha, they intended to bring about a revolt in the India. The magazine, which was started by them in 1913 to put about the weekly paper called Ghadar, meaning revolt, using a small hand press. The first kit came in Urdu, then in Gurumukhi, Later on, paper was sometimes published in Gujarati, Hindi, Pashto, Bengali, English, German, French, and the other. So this question you can expect कि भाई गदर को गदर न्यूज मैगजीन was written in which language. So firstly in Urdu and Gurumukhi and later on in the other languages as well. ठीक है चलो. Then, since the British government maintained an iron grip on the press in India, and it is one of the significance of the Ghadar movement. The revolutionary papers in India were have been suppressed in the press, especially in the World War One. The revolutionary papers were the only way to disseminate information that contradicted the government's take on the events. For example, Ghadar issued on August 1914. The news has reached that British are sending Indian troops to fight the Germans in order to save their white soldiers. So the newspaper is telling that these Indians are being used. They will be butchered, or they will be fighting the Germans, and the British want to save their own Indian soldiers, right? So, in order to keep India in slavery, look and understand. Even in the Europe, British save themselves and get Indians slain. Okay? So this is another way how they will using the Ghadar newspaper as a means to basically discuss the thing which were being repressed in India because of some important or some stringent press rules being imposed in the times of the World War One. Okay. Chalo. Now the Ghadar program we have discussed as organized assassination of the official public revolutionary anti-imperialist literature, work among the Indian troops, procure arms and bring about a revolt in the other country. They were being encouraged by two events. So this is the subjective conditions which is prevailing. So two things which will prompt their immediate response, or they will accelerate their process, that is outbreak of World War One, and that is Komagata Maru incident. Outbreak of the World War One, we have seen the reaction of the revolutionaries. The revolutionaries will say that this is a very important opportunity for the India to strike back at the empire. And the Komagata incident we will discuss. ठीक. तो Komagata incident था क्या? The Komagata was the name of a ship. Komagata was the name of the ship which carried around 370 passengers. Right? Mainly Sikh and Punjabi Muslim, that would be immigrants from Singapore to Vancouver, which have to reach to the Vancouver. Now, it was generally believed that the Canadian authorities were influenced by the British, and this was done. Let us see. So they were going from Hong Kong, from this place to Shanghai, and this. They have to reach to the Vancouver, and these people have to get out at the Vancouver. But what happened? The Canadian authorities, who are believed to be working on behalf of the Britishers, did not allow them to unboard here. Unboard nahi karne diya. That you will not be allowed to take off at the Vancouver. So the ship has to return. The Komagata has to return. And they returned Vancouver, then Victoria, and all this. Vancouver, and then here, then they'll come back to the Calcutta. Finally, they'll reach Calcutta. Now imagine yourself. For example, you are in a flight. Okay? You are a flight to, let's say, Dubai. आप गए Dubai, and the Dubai authority said, no, 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 we will not allow you to deboard. Now you're coming, then you'll come back with the same flight to the back. And imagine the kind of fury you will have. You will be very furious. कि भाई ये क्यों हुआ? Why did this happen? I have whole plan and everything was fine, and I have to spend additional 2 months in the same ship. Imagine the problems that these people must have faced. So this was the incident which has led to a lot of resentment among the Indians. The ship was finally anchored in Calcutta in September 14. So this is one date that you have to remember. September 1914, in ensuring the conflict with the police in the Calcutta. So when they reach Calcutta, obviously there will be a lot of resentment, and the British authority knew that. British authority knew that there is bound to be a lot of violence when they reached Calcutta, and there was a violence. A lot of people died in that violence. Right? Now, in this regard, the Canada has reached in 2008 issued an apology. Mr. Justin Trudeau has issued an apology. Right? Not in 2008, later on. So why he issued an apology? He said, we failed them utterly. That is what, next month on May 18th, I will stand in the House of the Commons and offer a full apology for Komagata Maru incident. And he did that. So let's very quickly see. So Japanese ship Komatagaru carrying around 370 South Asian immigrants sailed to Vancouver. Most passengers from Punjab, mostly Sikh, escaping British rule in India. After being docked for 2 months, passenger denied entry due to immigration laws, then sent back. When they disembarked in Calcutta, the British soldier opened fire, killing at least 19 and jailing the others. Keeping the election promise, Trudeau said that he will offer a formal apology. ठीक? This is the basic timeline. ठीक? So they, in September, they arrived in the Calcutta, and then the alleged leaders started to resist the arrest, gunfire, and all these things happened. Okay? So this is what prompted these Ghadar leaders that enough is enough, and now they will send their people to India. So inflamed by this and with the outbreak of World War I, the Ghadar leader decided to launch a violent attack to oust the British rule in India. Kartar Singh Sarba and Raghubar Dayal Gupta left for India. I don't have to remember the name. Just remember some Ghadar leaders left for India. Bengal revolutionaries were contacted. Raj Bihari Bose and Sachin Sanyal were asked to lead the movement. Raj Bihari Bose, remember, the revolutionary. The political dacoities were first committed to raise the fund. The Punjab political dacoities in January and February had somewhat new social content. So the raiders target the money lenders. Debt records were being damned with the cash, and they have decided the date, that is 21st February 1915 is the date where we will take up this particular revolt. So Ghadarites fixed this revolt as the date for an armed revolt in the Firozpur Lahore Rawalpindi garrison. So authority took immediate action aided by the Defense of India rules, and they get to know about it. Right? So those who was the army in the army, those who supported these Ghadarites, so these were disbanded. The leaders were arrested, deported, hanged. Raj Bihari Bose fled to Japan. Right? Sachin Sanyal was transported for life. British met the wartime threat with a formidable battery of repressive measures. A lot of repressive measures were seen, most intensive since 1847. Above Defense of India Act passed in March next month, primarily to smash the Ghadar movement. So there were large scale detention without trial, special court giving special sentences, court martial, and all these things happen. So in essence, what happened? In essence, their program failed to achieve its object. They have decided that this day we will come up with the revolt, that is 21st February, and before that could be done, the British get to know about it, and they have those people who are sentimental or those who are supporting this, they have been picked up and crushed. And they were aided, British were aided because of the World War I was going on. Okay. And also the major problem with the Ghadar movement was that the India was not ready for this radical program. है ना, गांधी जी तो आए नहीं थे, गांधी जी was not there. And obviously the masses were not aroused as much. The Swadeshi movement happened 10 years ago. So, and in between there was a huge political vacuum which was there. Right? So if we talk about the achievements of the Ghadar movement, so major achievement of the Ghadar movement, it is said to be that it was not a religious movement. It was lay in the realm of the ideology. It preached militant nationalism with completely secular approach, which was missing from the extremists. Because extremists tend to become what? Some sort of Hindu tinge that we have discussed. So this is one of the positives of the Ghadar movement. If you want to write about more positives in the mains answer, obviously one positive can be the Ghadar newspaper, which we have discussed. When there were repressions in India, they used to publish that there. Secondly, they carried on to the political momentum. They showcased the revolutionary zeal. They presented an example in front of the India that how the revolutionary sentiments can be brought upon and why we need to get British out of the India. So the politically and militarily, it failed to achieve its leadership. It lacked organized and sustained leadership, underestimated the extent of preparation required at every level. And some people blame Lala Hardayal also, who was unsuitable for the job of an organizer. That means as a leader, Lala Hardayal could not create a proper timelines and proper structures and institutions to carry out on this big thing. So this is your Ghadar movement. Let us see some questions with respect to Ghadar movement in 2005. Why were the Ghadar revolutionaries who became active during the World War I based? Where were the Ghadar revolutionaries who became active during the outbreak of the World War I based? Central America, North America, West America, South America. Very easy question. That is the North America. The next question is being asked in 2014. Ghadar was a revolutionary association of Indians with the headquarters in San Francisco, a nationalist organization operating from Singapore, a militant organization with headquarters in Berlin, a communist movement for Indian freedom with the headquarters in Tashkent. Very easy, straightforward question. A revolutionary association of India with the headquarters at San Francisco. Then history 1996. You have to match the two things. Abhinav Bharat Society, Anusilan Samiti, Ghadar Party, Swaraj Party. Swaraj Party we have not discussed. We'll discuss it within 5 to 6 lectures when we'll talk about Gandhi. Then we'll move to the non-cooperation. Then post non-cooperation, we will talk about the Swaraj Party. So Abhinav Bharat Society associated with V.D. Savarkar. So first ka D hai. If first ka D is there, then this is wrong. This is wrong. Then Anusilan Samiti, that is associated with the Aurobindo Ghosh. So second ka A hai. That is second ka A, and this is second ka A. Okay. Then Ghadar Party, Lala Hardayal. Third ka B. So that is wrong. Third ka C. This is the right answer. Very easy question. So this is your third ka C. Old question 1996. Now they're not asking question on this pattern. This is used to be one of the easier ones. Even if you don't know one of this, you are able to get it. Now UPSC is not asking questions on this pattern. Not at all. They're asking 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 like that. Who was the leader of the Ghadar party? Very easy. Bhagat Singh, Lala Hardayal, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, V.D. Savarkar, Lala Hardayal. Right. One mains question also. Though they failed to give independence to India in realm of ideology, Ghadar revolutionaries achieved great success. Elaborate. So try to write this in 150 words. ठीक? Chalo, this is question number 37. We'll try to get around 50 plus questions, 50 or 60 plus questions. And this is one thing for sure. If you are able to write these questions, even the structure of such questions, modern history is done. You don't have to revise anything from your prelims to the mains. Ek bar, once you have written all these questions, solve any test series, do anything, that's more than enough. Focus your energy on the other subjects, current affairs, optionals, mainly optionals, ethics. Don't focus your energy on the modern history with respect to your mains exam. Okay? So the majority of the energy has to be spent kahan pe? Abhi, in this course, while you're doing this course. Hai na? So finish your energy, write answers, get them, you get evaluated, make a proper notes, mains के answer लिख लिए अलग से, and prelims के question solve कर लिए. Prelims के भी question we have done around 115 question plus. So we'll reach up to 200 or 250 question at least. ठीक है? So that's all for today. That's all. That is the Ghadarite movement that we have discussed. In the next session, we'll talk about the Home Rule League movement, the other response in the World War I. So one of the responses of the Indians can be seen with the mutinies or the revolutionaries, because there won't be any response from the moderates. They're believing that we need to support them as a matter of duty. But there will be response from the side of the extremists. That will be the Home Rule League movement that will Tilak and any Besant will come up with. So see you all in the next session. Bye-bye. Thank you.